You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob.
Welcome to Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash. And, of course, you can find them online at truenorthmortgage.ca. With Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here in Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. How's it going, pal?
Scott, I'm doing very well.
I can't believe 7 days has blown by, and here we are yet
I know,
again.
amazing. Busy news day, too. There's a lot of it going on in the newsroom right before I jumped in here, so we got some big stuff coming.
All right, well, we won't keep you, but I see day 92 now. I'm guessing we still haven't unpacked.
No unpacking. I suspect we could be a couple more weeks, but
now I have a solution. I thought, if you wanted, I'd be happy to.
That's nice, but I have like an industrial set of clippers. Like mine are like barber clippers. Use your hair. They have the attachments and the right, you have different numbers. That's That's like for like your face.
Are you implying that I can't grow anything?
No, I maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think you probably could, but I don't know if that.
I probably could.
I don't think that would do it. And plus, like I believe it or not, I trim it really nicely. Like when I do trim it, it's like perfectly like a 3 or a 4. So did you have an attachment on that one, or?
Well, I don't have it with me. I was just doing a bit with the ring.
To be honest, I didn't know you were going to do that. We didn't plan that in advance, so that was pretty good. It's our first prop, I think, isn't it?
Well, we have our True North mugs.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right, so
thanks for the try, though.
No to the razor.
I appreciate it.
Let's get right to the first word to Frisco. I read a story about a $4,400 gas bill in Newmarket. What the hell?
Yeah, great reporting from Joseph Quigley over at Newmarket today. Everybody's talking about the price of things, the price of our power. We've been hearing reports that our power bills could go up 30% this winter, right?
Yeah.
Well, this poor guy in Newmarket received a bill for more than $4,400, Aaron Thomas, and he's now had to appeal to Enbridge to find out what's going on with this bill. Just could you imagine getting a power bill like that?
No.
But again, I say this every week, but this is local journalism, right? This is fantastic stuff where he's like a great local newspaper would. We've gone and we're telling this story about what happened, and hopefully he gets some resolution. Because I just, that's insane.
Can't imagine. Another big story I know that you and the news team are chasing out-of-town investors in Sault Ste. Marie buying up properties.
Yeah, this has been a great ongoing story. James Hopkins has been quarterbacking the coverage of this, and he's unearthed, some of these numbered companies, right, that are looking at Northern Ontario and Sault Ste. Marie in particular as a great investment. So they're buying up every old house that goes up for sale. So he's found some numbered companies about more than 100. So he has more than 500 houses that we've seen in town now that are owned by out-of-town investors, which raises a lot of ethical issues about whether companies should be buying up single-family dwellings, even if they're going to rent them out. But in this case, a lot of them they're being bought on speculation. So they're buying the houses, they're leaving them boarded up and vacant, not doing anything about it. So the city's property standards bylaw enforcement officers are stuck trying to deal with this. And then our great City Hall reporter, David Helwig, had a great story this week, adding to James's reporting that the city legal department has filed dozens of charges against these companies in provincial court, trying to get them. And they've had 100% conviction rates. There's been 6 or 7 convictions. And when the list came out, it matched a lot of the same companies that James had been reporting on. So it's a really important story. And what's great about it, too, is that the candidates here in the Soo running for city council and for mayor are talking about it now because it's something we've unearthed. It's what I think I've said on the show I like to call flashlight journalism, right? We're shining the light on something that's happening right around us that maybe we didn't know about. So it's been great reporting on that front.
And you mentioned the election, and that's a great segue to the municipal election that's coming up towards the end of October and the coverage that we can look forward to across the network.
Yeah, we've been doing some great stories. We have new election pages set up, new election sections set up on the homepage of every website, which is there for our readers. And we're doing great coverage every week. Like I've talked about before, we're doing the Meet Your Candidates kind of stories, profiling different issues, but also breaking big news. In Collingwood, for example, Eric Engel had a story about a deputy mayor candidate there who was charged with assault. And those are difficult stories to write, but they're in the public interest. They're filed in court. We pulled the court documents and filed that story. The candidate is still running, as far as I know, as of today.
Right.
And charge is still pending. Of course, he's innocent until proven guilty. Yep. But it's an interesting case. And when you put your name out there, you got to report on these things. In Stratford, we have some exciting stuff coming next week. We're partnering with a local film company there to do some election roundtables.
Oh, nice.
So they're gathering 5 or 6 candidates at a time randomly to sit around the table and talk about some issues. We're recording those, and they're going to come out every day for a week on Stratford Today, which is really exciting. So, yeah, we have some great stuff coming along.
And I understand in Sault Ste. Marie, you're doing some sit-downs and one-on-ones with the 5 mayoral candidates.
Yes, I drew the short straw, I guess. So I've been interviewing. We're meeting with each of them one-on-one, same kind of thing. Nice chats, talking about the issues at play, giving our readers a bigger sense of who they are. So we're sitting in this studio here. It's been difficult because I haven't had you there with me. I've been doing it all alone, so I'm kind of blowing it. But they come out next week too, so we'll see how those go.
I'm sure you're doing a great job. Look forward to seeing it. Coming up on today's show, I'm excited about it. A good friend of yours and former colleague, Patricia Treble, a royal bigwig, I guess, in Canada, you could call her, one of the foremost experts on royal family watching in Canada. It's going to be a good chat with her following the Queen's funeral.
I'm really excited. A good friend of mine and an old colleague, and really, really knows her stuff on the royal family. So it'll be interesting to get her take on the funeral and what's next for the royal family.
All right, it's going to be good. The first word to Frisco. Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. TrueNorthMortgage.ca is where you'll find all the information. We're back with Patricia Treble right after this.
She had my heart, oh, very nearly. Put down a shin bone.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley.
Welcome back to Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash, and you can find them online at truenorthmortgage.ca. With Michael Friscolani, we call him Frisco, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith, and pleased to be joined on the show right now by Patricia Treble, a leading commentator on all things royal in this great country of ours. Patricia, welcome to Inside the Village. It's wonderful to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Scott.
Now, I'm guessing that you probably haven't been doing much the last few days.
I've been doing nothing for the past 12 days.
Now, I think we should point out before we get into a royal discussion that you and Frisco go way back, and it's a bit of a reconnection for you.
Yeah, it's a full disclosure. I think Patricia and I were colleagues for a long time in Maclean's magazine, where she did a lot of her fantastic royal coverage. And as we were talking before we went on air, also had written an obituary, as every major media organization had done for how many years, right, Patricia? Decades. They've had their coverage ready for when the Queen passed, and Maclean's did as well, and Patricia quarterbacked that. So her piece is available right on Maclean's site. With, I assume,
it is.
Yeah. So we go back a long way, so it brings back a lot of great memories. And of course, Patricia kindly answered our email within 1 minute to say she would come on. So thank you for that, Patricia.
For you, Frisco, anything.
Thank you.
Wow, those are words you don't hear very often.
I know.
Never around here do we hear that. Those words.
You know what? I'm going to say, and this is, I'm not telling tales out of school, but the Maclean's newsroom, especially when big events happen, I remember Frisco having to write about William and Kate when they became engaged, and it's a fabulous newsroom. It was a fabulous newsroom. Everyone got along, and everyone just pitched in and did stuff.
It really was. It was a magical place, and we did do we would cover big things in a big way. So we'd all have to jump into things, and even we didn't know what we were talking about. But I do recall, I actually had forgotten that I did that. But yes, I did write something. I guess I'd have to Google it and check it out. But yeah, we could talk. We could do a whole other podcast episode just on some of the great things we covered. But Patricia was definitely a key part of our operation.
Patricia, I can't. First of all, I want to say for anybody listening or watching, you are a wonderful follow on Twitter at Patricia Treble, and I've certainly been following your words over the last several days. How would you describe the last 10 or 12 days in your life?
Since that morning when we got the email that the doctors were concerned about her. For me, it was when the Archbishop of Canterbury tweeted that he was holding the royal family in his prayers that I kind of went, I gulped, and my heart sank. We've known it's the inevitable. This is what everyone's called it. We've known it's been coming for a long time, especially since Prince Philip died last year. You could see the Queen becoming increasingly frail. But I don't think anyone was prepared for it. I mean, look, 2 days before she died, she was meeting with the outgoing prime minister. She was meeting with the new prime minister of Britain. She was talking to apparently her racing trainer about horses and what races they were going to be going into. And 2 days later, she's dead. It has simply been this slow build up and this culmination to what happened with the funeral, because they planned this all out. It's called Operation London Bridge. The funeral was D+10, and everything really kind of fell into place. It all worked quite well. But it was, her dying in Scotland, and then it was the emotion of seeing the live shots of as the 6-hour journey from Balmoral down to Edinburgh, and you can see simply thousands upon thousands of people lining those Highland roads. And then you've got the emotion in Edinburgh, and then it comes down to London. And so you're just building and building and building. You've got the queue, the endless queue, the queue that is simply the queue of all queues. And then it builds to the funeral. And you're thinking, like, what can they do? Britain is good at pomp and circumstance. They are very good at this. They've been rehearsing. They've been out in the middle of the night. But I don't know that anyone expected, except those who are like minutely involved, like people like me, we've been getting the briefings on exactly what was happening, broken down by the minute. But to see it all live, to see it actually happen, it was just extraordinary. And I think that's the one word, extraordinary.
You're right, too. And I can only imagine for you, I mean, I've covered big stories that I've been following for years, right? That where they're going to have a big moment that's coming, whether it's a criminal case or an appeal or some kind of that. But this is different, right? You've been preparing for this. I know you and I have had personal conversations about this moment coming. And I think you're right, Patricia. What struck me was just how quickly it happened. She was talking to the new prime minister a couple days before. And I don't know, this is maybe a morbid question, but do we know the details on what happened to her? Or is that something they're not going to release?
We don't know. And I don't know that they're ever going to release it. Mm-hmm. We know that, she canceled the next day when she was supposed to swear in the Privy Council. It's a lot of standing. She's done that before, where she had a big day and then she cancels the events for the next day. But clearly something happened. What we do know is that her daughter, Princess Anne, was with her. She was doing engagements up in the north of Scotland. And then at some point, there's a call made to Prince Charles, who was staying nearby in Dumfries House, which is just outside of Edinburgh. And all of a sudden, it is just about the time that press notification about her health is put out. And then he is on a helicopter and he is rushing. That we knew. So what happened, we believe that they are the only two who were there when she died. But let's face it, the Queen is a very private person. This is probably, I'm going to be honest, not a bad way to go. She died with her boots on, as one person said to me. Said very regal boots, but she died with her boots on. And then what happened is, this is a woman who's given no interviews, a woman who has kept her thoughts very much to herself for her entire life. And yet, in her death, she allows the world in. And she's always said she must be seen to be believed, right? This is always what she said. She wears bright clothes for a specific reason, so everyone can identify her in a crowd. She's always been doing all these tours. As Prince Philip said, we don't come to Canada for our health. They come because this is their duty. And in this end, we saw things we've never seen before. The King's Succession Council, we've never seen that live. Mm-hmm. Everyone around the world. We've never seen a monarch's funeral. The funerals were all private. Her father's was at Windsor in 1952, and of course it would be radio. But we've never seen it. We've never seen the committal service. It was the moment at the end of the committal service, they've taken the imperial state crown off of her coffin. They've taken the scepter and the orb, which is the symbols of her temporal and her spiritual power. And it's the Lord Chamberlain, who's the head of her household. This is the man who runs everything at Buckingham Palace and all the palaces. By the way, he's the former head of MI5, just to the side.
Wow.
And he gets up in front of the coffin and he does what they have done for centuries. He takes his staff, which is a sign of his authority, and he breaks it in two and he puts it on the coffin. And we've never seen any of that before. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really her gift to all of us, is that she came of age in a more different age, an age when, she wasn't expected to be in front of the cameras all the time, but she died in the age of Zoom. Look at the last few years of the pandemic. She was the Zoom queen.
Yeah.
And she knew what she had to do, and she did it. And that's extraordinary.
I think one of the things that struck me in watching the service Monday is how meticulously orchestrated every last detail about the funeral was. It blew my mind, and I can't imagine the months and years of planning that goes into something like this.
So they've had Operation London Bridge, which is what the whole thing from her death to her funeral is called. They've had it for a very long time, and the Queen's been intimately involved in this. She is definitely shaped on the state funerals of monarchs past, very much her father's. She adored her father, and her father died. Here's the tragic thing: her father died at 56. So when they've been sounding off all the guns, they were sounding them off here in Ottawa, they've been sounding them in Toronto and in London, and 96 for the Queen, for her age. Her father was just 56 because he died so young. So she lived 40 years longer than him. And the detail is extraordinary. So it took so when the coffin left Westminster Hall on its way literally across the street to Westminster Abbey, it was at 10:44, not 10:45, not 10:43, 10:44. They know exactly how long it's going to take for Royal Navy ratings to pull the state gun carriage. They know exactly how long everything is going to take. They were off a little bit in the timing as they ended up, going from the funeral all the way to Windsor. But I mean, that's a long way. I'm giving them a little bit of leeway.
Patricia, certainly the royal family, no stranger to controversy over the years. One of my takeaways from watching all of this over the last couple of weeks, and Frisco and I've certainly chatted about it, is the relationship between William and Harry, and I wonder if their grandmother's death is going to help them mend those broken fences. What's your take on that?
I don't know that we're going to see that. I think it's going to take time. Certainly from everything we saw, leading up to the funeral and the day of the funeral, there isn't really very much relationship at all. So I think we're going to see what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, William is now heir to the throne. He's now first in line. And over time, Harry's going to be slipping down. We're going to have to find out. I mean, the big the sort of Damocles kind of looming over everyone is that he has a book coming out. He has his memoirs coming out. Nobody really knows exactly when it's coming. The theory is that it's coming in November. Is he going to write another chapter because of the Queen's death? We don't know. But the assumption is that his father, who is now King Charles III, does not come off well in this book. And the assumption is that William does not come off well. So, if he's talking about all these intimate details within the royal family, which are never normally talked about, I don't know how much of a relationship we're going to have in the near future. I think the hope is that over time, everything will slowly fade. Certainly, the king has made it clear that he wants Harry and his family within their lives. He's close to both his sons, and so this must be painful.
I can only imagine. I think the other question that everybody has going forward, right, is what's our relationship with the monarchy now? I mean, it's a question you've been asked a billion times in your lifetime, right, Patricia? Yeah. But does the Queen's death change that? Does it change the debate? Does it matter anymore? I mean, do you make a case for why we need to keep our relationship? What do we do going forward?
Yeah, so the thing is, and I liked how the head of the Environics Institute, he had a great Twitter thread on, I think, Saturday. And he said, don't talk about, should we get rid of the monarchy or not in Canada? I think he said the question is, for a country that is increasingly ethnically diverse, for a country that is increasingly regionally diverse, for a country that is the way we are now, what is the form of government we want for our head of state? What is the form of government we want, to basically how we want to organize our entire state? Because remember, the crown of Canada is at the heart of everything. Governmental power flows from the crown. Judicial power flows from the crown. Military power, again, comes from the crown. Everything flows from the crown. So, I mean, what he said, we need to figure out a system that works for that. And he says, and if we can do that in a way that makes us come out stronger at the end, not more divided, then he says, then go for it. But if we're going to end up being completely divided as we rip apart our entire Constitution, we want to think really hard about what we're about to do. And I mean, for those of us with enough gray hair who have suffered through enough constitutional angst and enough referendums, we need to think very hard and hard about this. About what we want. I mean, we've got a system that, to be honest, it works. We never really talk about it. It's always kind of in the background. You never talk about the Crown unless there's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And that's really the good about the Crown, but that's also the problem with the Crown, because it is simply, I equated it a while ago. I said it's like vaccines. You never think about them. So you never, after a while, you think, well, why do we need a vaccine? Why do we need this to do? The reason we need polio vaccines, the reason we need measles vaccines is to stop epidemics, is to stop problems. And so you have to think about what the monarchy is doing in Canada. And the other problem is that civics are simply not taught in this country anymore. I mean, there's a half course in Ontario. It's literally a half a year in high school. That's it. And so we don't teach about Parliament. We don't teach about the Crown. We don't teach about how everything is interconnected. And so we're making bad mistakes. People keep talking about the British monarchy. We know it's the Canadian monarchy. I mean, the Canadian Crown is completely different from the British Crown. It's completely different from the Australian Crown. I mean, we have 10 provinces. We have lieutenant governors. They don't have any of that in Britain. Our Crown is uniquely Canadian. But people keep talking, the King of England. Can we not talk about the King of England? There has not been a King of England since 1702. Please stop talking about the King of England. But polling questions talk about, should we, the King of England is now Charles III. What should we do?
Just for the record, Patricia, what's correct? He's the king of what?
He's the king of the United Kingdom.
Okay.
He's the king of Canada. Mm-hmm. And in total, there are 15 realms of which he is head of state. He is the king of. So Australia, New Zealand, places like that.
But not the King of England.
Not the King of England.
Okay.
It's literally 1702. Acts of Union, 1707. Queen Anne was on the throne. There's your history lesson.
See, Scott thought it was 1708.
But what do I know? Patricia, I want to ask
those little things.
I want to ask you, Meghan Markle. It seems that her relationship,
the Duchess of Sussex,
exactly.
Yes.
Her relationship with the British people, or at least with the British press, continues to be strained. Do you see that ever changing? Is she getting a bad rap?
I think there has been a lot of friction between the British press and the Sussexes. They are very litigious. There has been a lot of lawsuits. There have been a lot of lawyers' letters flying around.
Yeah.
That does not engender, good relations. I'm going to be honest. Every little thing is picking. It's like, come on, her dress. I'm going to be honest. I was looking at all the dresses. Hers wasn't my favorite, but you know what? So be it. I mean, that's just fashion style. It was perfectly appropriate. Go for it. I liked her hat. Her hat was spectacular. But I think yes. And so I take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, I always say there's never black and white. There's always shades of gray. And so you've got to balance everything. But in some ways, some things. What's interesting is when the Sussexes sue or send lawyers letters, and when they don't. And one of the notable exceptions is in the Times of London, when Valentine Lowe, just before the Oprah interview in 2021, did a whole series talking about the Duchess bullying members of her staff. And he had it, you could tell that was lawyered from one end to another. They were expecting a lawsuit. There has never been a lawsuit filed. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see how it happens and how it plays. There's definitely black blood. But I think a lot of it is there's an interaction between, they're now in America, they're now in Southern California, and you've got that Southern California kind of, there's the how they're perceived in the United States. Like, they're really perceived more as, I think, celebrities in the United States versus how Britain looks at the royal family. Because remember, We only in Canada look at the royal family really for, scandals, maybe funerals, weddings, and royal tours. Maybe a big story here or there, but that's pretty much it. Whereas in Britain, because they're covered so intensely, that they're in the papers all the time. All their engagements, all their charity fundraising, all their, they're going to a big concert here, they're going to this there. It's all covered in the papers. And there is an intensity of that coverage. I mean, there is a royal rota. All the newspapers, all the news organizations have royal correspondents, and all they do is cover the royal family. Mm-hmm. And that is expected. And I think part of the issue was that Meghan, when she came into the royal family, didn't realize the intensity of that that news focus. And she also didn't realize that, unlike in her old world, which is the entertainment world, you don't get the first right of refusal on stories. You don't get to have photo approval and things like that. I mean, which is standard in Hollywood, but that doesn't work, of course, in the British press. And the British press have a reputation for just being ruthless. Mm-hmm. And we definitely saw it. I mean, Meghan, they focused on her, and but also, to be honest, she sells, right? She and Harry are two of the most biggest draws in the world. Mm-hmm. Everything you put up, people will click on it. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, in this day and age, when you're trying to make money, you're going to go with what sells, and what sells are the Sussexes.
For the record, Patricia, that's not why we invited you on the show.
That is not why you invited me on the show.
Just so people don't think we called you on just to get clicks. We wanted to, just so that's clear.
I hope you get clicks.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Of course, we're going to get clicks because of you, but definitely. The other question, the issue is, you hear from a lot of Indigenous voices in Canada during this, after her death, and during the funeral, torn about the amount of attention we're giving the Queen, or that the Queen's receiving in general, and a lot of voices talking about, what colonialism did to their cultures, and so how to reconcile those two things.
Right.
Have you heard from a lot of people, Patricia? What are your thoughts on that?
So what was interesting was, if anyone was watching the national commemoration that took place in Ottawa at Christchurch Cathedral, it started with an Indigenous advisor for the Algonquin First Nation. His name is Albert Dumont, I believe. And he was talking about that. So he is an Indigenous man, and he was talking very openly. He was, it was a praise for the Queen, but he talked about the horrors of what the Crown, people in the name of the Crown, have inflicted on Indigenous peoples in this country. And he talked about the destruction of their society. And he also talked then about what the Queen has done to help mend things, and what the Queen has done for reconciliation. And what he actually was very frank about is, he was saying, and now of course that's going to continue with Charles. And Charles had just been here in May. There was a huge Indigenous focus to his tour here, and reconciliation, that was absolutely part of it. And both he and Mary Simon, the Governor General, did a number of speeches talking about that. And what Albert Dumas said is, he said, for him, for a lot of people, what needs to happen is there needs to be an apology on behalf of the Crown. Now, a lot of people will say, well, when Stephen Harper gave his apology as the government, he was doing it on behalf of the Crown in Parliament. And I think what Mr. Dumas and a lot of other Indigenous people are saying, that's not enough. Mm-hmm. It has to come from, can't come from a politician. It has to come from the Crown. So I think what we're going to see is increasingly is a call for Charles to make a formal apology. Mm-hmm. And I think that will go a long way. But it was fascinating, because I was covering that tour, and it was fascinating talking to Indigenous leaders about what needs to happen, and about what Charles's charities here in Canada have been doing in regards to reconciliation, in regards to Indigenous languages. So he helps organizations that are putting out children's books in Indigenous languages, to try to do anything to keep the languages alive, to help keep the cultures alive. It's all, all these little things that add up. And of course, he's been talking about this for a long time. And so that was the fascinating part. It's worth going to listen to the video and to listen to him, to Mr. Jamal, when he talks at that service that happened for the National Day of Mourning.
Patricia, I'm sure that you've seen the video circulating the last 24 hours or so of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Saturday night at the hotel lobby with the Canadian delegation singing, I think it was Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes, apparently it was. I'm going to be honest, not my favorite song in the world, but Bohemian Rhapsody it is.
Not the best pick by the PM, but who are we to judge? In poor taste, in your opinion?
2 days before the funeral, it wasn't the night before. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little agnostic about this. I think people who really hate the Prime Minister seize upon it. People who really like him are kind of like, whatever. What I think kind of softens it, I mean, I'm going to say, 2 days before the funeral, maybe not the best of timings. Is it probably how I'll phrase it? I will say, though, that when he's spoken about the Queen, he's spoken very, very deeply. He's known her since he was a child. And he's spoken about how much he respects her and how much he likes her and stuff like that. I'm going to say somebody had a good quip, and they said, really, we need the President of Finland and the Prime Minister of Canada getting together, because, of course, she was, got into hot water because she was dancing at a party, and he got into hot water because he's lip syncing, and they need to come together and form some sort of group.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you can certainly say that there's always been mutual admiration and respect between Her Majesty and the Prime Minister. That is certainly true. Patricia, I think it's safe to say that over the last 2 weeks or so, you have done a royal job of covering this event. And on behalf of all Canadians, and I know your buddy Frisco, we thank you for that, and thank you for doing this today.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Scott. Oh, this was such a pleasure. It was my honor to do it with you. And look, there's going to be lots of royal events. We're going to be having a coronation. We're going to be having an investiture of the Prince of Wales. So William has to learn how to speak Welsh, which is not the easiest language in the world. Now, Charles did it. He's actually quite good in Welsh. But I'm waiting for William to learn how to speak Welsh.
Well, with all of that activity going up, I think it's only appropriate that we anoint you the royal correspondent for Inside the Village.
You finally made it, Patricia.
That's right. The hell with Maclean's. You're on ITV now.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you so much, Patricia. It's been great catching up.
Frisco, Scott, my pleasure.
From newsmakers to celebrities to other prominent guests, you'll find them all on Village Media's new interview series, Up Close and Personal. Join host Scott Sexsmith as he goes one-on-one with well-known Canadians to hear their story. Up Close and Personal. Look for it on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village. Frisco and Scott back to wrap it up. Patricia was fantastic. You know what I was thinking about the whole Harry and Meghan thing? You know what I like in that too? Do you remember when Wayne Gretzky and Janet Jones got married? And Janet got blamed for taking Wayne out of Canada. Yeah. Do you see the similarities?
There's a lot of similarities there, It wasn't, none of it, 99% of it was inaccurate, right, at the time.
99% of it? I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean that. Look at that. That's amazing.
Patricia was great. And I truly hope that we have her back because, like she said, there's going to be lots of royal activity in the years to come.
Well, you know what's amazing? It is totally genuine, her passion for this.
Yeah.
Like I've known her for years, and not a day would go by where we didn't talk about something where she would pitch wild stories, story meetings about the royals, and she just knew her stuff inside and out. It was very much a passion for her. So, I mean, to be honest, she wrote the Queen's obituary for Maclean's magazine, and it's an amazing piece. So she's fantastic. So it was great to catch up.
It was, and it was so great to see the two of you rekindle that relationship and reconnect again. It was fantastic. Great. All right, pal, let's wrap it up and come back in a week from now. Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash. TrueNorthMortgage.ca is where you'll find them. Where you will find us is InsideTheVillage.ca. Across the the Village Media Network, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. For my good friend Michael Friscolanti, Editor-in-Chief here at Village Media, and for Derek Turner, Executive Producer of the show, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.